Thank you, sir, for this nice introduction, and thank you all and the organizers to inviting me for this meeting. I'm supposed to talk on implementation and future initiatives. As you may know, the Parliament is not the executive branch of government, of European government, so we hardly may have limited capacity for initiative. Also, we are co-legislators. However, we continue interested in this subject. The energy infrastructure regulation is an important and essential building brick in the process of constructing an internal energy market. All along the last decades, member states have chosen and pursued their own individual energy policy approaches, planning and deploying investment in infrastructure in a largely uncoordinated way. What were the results of such an approach? First, a great external energy dependence. Secondly, the energy isolation of certain European regions with occasional episodes of supply shortages and interruptions revealing severe problems of security of supply. Thirdly, a market where the increase in cross-border electricity transmission during the current decade is less than half the increase during the previous decade, and a cross-border market where interconnection targets defined for 2005 amounting of 10% of installed generation capacity have not been reached by a large number of member states. And finally, a market, or not yet finally, a market with important gas price differences between Central Europe and Western Europe due to lack of flows into Central Europe. And the national market structure typified by monopolistic or oligopolistic companies where the incumbents have no incentives to invest in new interconnections that may open up competition. European citizens and businesses are paying a high price as a result of a national fragmented approach to energy policy. We can only grant security of supply and aim to ease the current and future trend for increasing energy prices through an integrated energy market. A functioning transnational energy market can create economies of scale and synergies. For example, by optimizing investments in storage and backup generation capacity, enabling balancing and helping the integration of increasing amounts of variable electricity generation. A number of important steps were taken in the recent past to build a working European energy market. The third energy package in 2009, provisions for unbundling transmission, supply and production, providing for EU-wide network codes, establishing ACER, establishing the creation of European network bodies, ENTSOs, for transmission systems operators to cooperate. Then the REMIT regulation setting rules for wholesale energy trading and market transparency. And the new Trans-European Energy Infrastructure Guidelines, of course. The current regulation represents a change in approach from the previous 10E guidelines dating back from 2003, which led to the approval of some 600 infrastructure projects negotiated with a national focus and no clear European integration approach. The new regulation has an EU-wide approach and it aims at removing physical barriers to cross-border flows of energy, diversifying energy supply, and helping to integrate a growing share of renewable energy in the system. The PCIs selected need to have a cross-border impact, bringing benefits to at least 2 member states, and are organized along 9 geographic priority implementation corridors and 3 thematic areas: electricity highways, smart grids, and carbon dioxide. PCIs are assessed by national regulators and evaluated and ranked by regional groups, according to a number of criteria and to a cost-benefit analysis. After the preparation of regional lists of PCIs, ACER provides its opinion for cross-regional consistency. And a union-wide list of PCIs is adopted by the European Commission and finally subject to approval by Parliament and Council. The first PCI list was adopted by the Commission 2 days ago, on the 14th of October, and it contains 248 new projects. These projects will now enjoy some advantages for a faster permitting, a one-stop shop to manage the permit granting process, preferential treatment by national administrations, streamlined environmental assessment with enhanced transparency and public participation, and a 3.5 years time limit for the permit granting decision, which can go up to 4.5 years under circumstances that include special planning. The quick deployment of these infrastructures also enjoys regulatory measures to facilitate investment, the cross-border cost allocation according to the member states where benefits are incurred, the remuneration incentives according to the increased risk level of cross-border projects, and the eligibility for the Connecting Europe facility funds through grants for studies and financial instruments under more restrictive conditions. Under more restrictive conditions, some PCIs can also be eligible for grants for works. The CEF file was recently approved by the ITRE committee in the European Parliament, and it may be voted already next week in the plenary session in Strasbourg, if negotiations on the multi-annual financial framework 2014-2020 allow it, which is not yet sure. 5.8 billion euro are expected to be available for energy projects. This might not be sufficient to leverage some 200 billion of investments needed up to 2020, but the restrictive approach to the EU budget imposed by the Council forced severe cuts in important investment areas for the future of Europe, such as energy. We might have to pay a high economic price in the future due to short-term budgetary and myope policy. Look, for example, at the projected yearly savings of 40-70 billion under a scenario of European energy market integration. The approval of the first list of PCIs projects that we can celebrate today is an important first step towards a functioning energy market. Not all the obstacles will be resolved after this first list of projects, and this process needs a continued renewal along the coming years. For example, the Iberian Peninsula will still be at 6% interconnection capacity with France. The Baltic Energy Market Interconnection Plan will require implementation. Further interconnections with North Africa and neighboring countries should be explored in the future, and long-distance, high-capacity electricity highways and smart grids will also deserve more emphasis. However, we enter now a new challenging phase, which is deployment. Implementation. Implementation difficulties were faced in the past and are still being faced in regard to the transposition and application of other EU energy legislation, like the third package. In the case of new cross-border infrastructures, we consider that the support and joint cooperation of the Member States will be of utmost importance. After all, it is on their territory that infrastructure will be built. Such projects will directly promote private investment, economic growth, and jobs for Europeans. let me finish, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that member states accept that the times of acting alone in the energy sector will have no long-term future. It's not only a matter of sector-specific policy goals, but also one of key importance for the Union's economic position in the race to attract industry, sustainable growth, and employment. Thank you for your attention.